Yeah, since it is 11, I can start with an introduction of myself and the co-manager, Chris, of the ILA Marketing Forum from now through next year. I'm Emmy, and I am the content coordinator at the Mount Prospect Public Library, and we do not have a TikTok account. And then I'll let Chris quickly say hello too. I'm pretty sure Lincolnwood also does not have a TikTok account, so we're here to learn.
That's correct. My name is Chris. I'm the deputy director over here at Lincolnwood. No, we do not have a TikTok account. We have been dabbling in a lot of Instagram reels and doing things like that, producing video content that is of the TikTok's length and size and kind of audience and stuff, but we do not have a TikTok platform yet.
Would it be really interesting to kind of start this roundtable in conversation with getting a general sense of how many people on here have a library that's using TikTok, or if you join this roundtable because you're interested in being on TikTok, or for any other reason. We can kind of wait too while more people join.
Yeah, and feel free to unmute yourself and chat, or talk, or use the chat if you're more comfortable with that, or you don't have the opportunity to unmute. I don't think anybody is here from Palatine because I believe it's their staff development day or staff training day, but they do have a TikTok. I'll see if I can find it. There's also another library that's been put in here, Champaign, Jayville Library. It's also a good opportunity too, if you have a moment, to make sure that your name in the participant list is accurate. It's helpful if we at least have your correct name, but maybe also with the library where you're from or what your title is, something like that too, just to help us get to know everybody. $1,230 followers in a year for Champaign seems like a really good number. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Would you be comfortable in sharing kind of how that growth happened, or if you had any, like, I don't know, you never really know what video might take off or be, viral on different levels, but if you have any examples of that, I'd love to hear something if you're comfortable with that.
Well, first I just want to share that it's really my colleagues on the team who took charge of this whole stream. They proposed adding it. I didn't have the bandwidth in my group to add it, and they've done a great job with it. And if you look through our videos, you can see that there are a couple that have a lot of views. So like you're saying, it's hard to predict ahead of time, but there are definitely a few that got shared a lot. And I think some of the things that they did are sort of predictable, like introducing themselves. But they've done a lot with music that's really fun, and they've tried things. I think it's important in all of our streams to be experimental, and I think that that's really paid off for them. So, we'd love to get feedback from all of you, but, there's one that says, 8,000 views is a lot. I think, that there's one that has that many. And it generated a lot of conversation in our staff about generational conversations and wording as well. Just what do certain words mean to different groups of people? So you can see there's a big range. Some have only had a few hundred views and others have had thousands. And there's the one about teen staff and their problems was really fun. That got a lot of views as well. So I don't know if I really have a lot of great insights, but I think looking at the content that they found successful is helpful. They've encouraged each other too. I think they've really had fun in the filming of them and making of them. Right now, they're a lot busier with kids here in the building in person. More than 100 kids every day are here in the building after school. So they're busy in person right now and have less time to devote to the stream. It's been a really interesting space for us and very fun. And I would like to do more of sharing content across streams, taking some of these videos and sharing them across our Instagram stream, for example, for Reels. So I'm really curious today to hear from other people and how things have been going. Is that helpful?
Yes, and I think you bring up an interesting point, and it was actually a question that I had as a library without a TikTok account. You mentioned that it is your team who proposed it and is largely handling it at this point. And I am kind of curious about who on here, like how has TikTok come up for your library? Who on here has a TikTok account and had no previous knowledge really of the platform or interest in it? Or is it more like you were just saying that staff proposed it? So you have a team or a staff member who's dedicated to kind of creating this content and is personally / professionally interested in the platform. And then I think it'll be really interesting to also talk about different ways that you share that content. Or maybe Chris, like you said, you are creating TikTok-like content, you're just not using TikTok. So I don't know if we want to start sort of like, I would love to know if there's anybody on this roundtable that created a TikTok account without having any prior knowledge of the platform, or has everybody who has created one come to that decision based off staff who were interested in the platform and had knowledge of it? Okay, you can just feel free, Robin. It looks like you have your hand up, so please share.
I did. I put my hand up to be polite.
Thank you.
Well, we just got a TikTok account, so I'm actually filming our first TikTok today, this afternoon. But I had my own personal one that I got during the pandemic. You know, I'm 37 years old, so I'm like an older TikTok user, and I had no idea what it was or anything like that. And I'm like obsessed. Like I spend so much time on TikTok, like at home, and it's like a problem. But I kept seeing like libraries pop up. I have some librarian friends that have their own TikToks, and I was like, oh my gosh, like these are so funny. And you know, we were making reels, and we've made like little videos like in like Windows like video maker. But I thought and especially from like our last meeting that we had um with Palatine, how they were like, oh yes, the editor is so great, and it kind of like solidified our choice, I think, to move to making videos on TikTok. And we are planning on sharing them like across all of our platforms. But I think it's smart to start on TikTok, because a lot of those trends you're seeing, like trends I see in Reels and especially like on Facebook stories too, they're all videos that stem from these like viral TikToks. So I always thought, you know, if you're going to do it like a TikTok like video, you might as well just start on TikTok, because that's where it comes from, instead of trying to like imitate it on Instagram or something like that.
So, and you said you are going to film your first TikTok today soon. So you
Yes.
haven't shared yet. Okay. But you
Right.
do you have a plan for sharing it across multiple platforms already in place, or are you kind of just going to wing it as you create content and share it on TikTok?
So I think we are creating a plan, like how many videos we want to make, you know, per month, or what kind of videos we want to make. So nothing is like set in stone, but I believe every time we make a TikTok, I am planning to, you know, do it across our platforms.
And does anyone want to jump in with the process that they have for sharing across platforms now while we're on sort of the topic of doing that, or share more? Like Robin, it was really interesting to hear that you made that decision without having previous knowledge of TikTok and are now kind of obsessed with it. That gives me hope that maybe I too one day can feel more passionately and excited about TikTok.
I mean, TikTok is great, and like especially diving in to look at what other libraries and librarians are sharing, because the amount of humor out there is so great, and then it just gets you excited. So like, you know, when they're making funny videos about, like, I really liked what the video you were showing, like our teen librarians and their problems. Like it's very like on trend. So it's like not only are you showing like that, like librarians have a sense of humor, but you're also like showing them in a modern light, because like these videos that you're making sometimes are going to be like, you know, your own ideas, but a lot of them, I think with TikTok, they go with trends. But I think that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think the trends is really what kind of brings TikTok to the realm that we've already kind of all been doing with social media management for years now. But TikTok does it in such a different way where it's extremely reactionary. And you do have a lot of these, like, whether it's a viral dance or a viral trend or an idea or something like that. And if there's a way to connect to that, then that's when I think that those numbers would probably jump to those, like we saw for Champagne, where they would jump into the thousands for views versus other times when they're in the hundreds, which is still a good number, don't get me wrong. But there's something about that video that had the magic connection of probably appropriate hashtags, appropriate relevancy, and appropriate timing. And those are kind of the three things that we can take from our lessons and our experiences with things on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and then apply those to TikTok. TikTok for me is a little bit scarier because it's all video based, right? Or for the most part, it's video based. And video is something that I can do, but it will take me about 4 hours to just edit a little 30-second video based on my skill set. But there is a way that I think you could have like a photo scrolling kind of a thing in TikTok. I've seen that kind of pop up a little bit recently, but I don't know if that's something that's really going to be beneficial for libraries or if that's just a duplication of Instagram.
I'm super curious about Cindy Stark's viral video. I don't know if she wants to share anything about.
Well, our youth services came up with it, and it doesn't even have really what I'll call music to it. But one of our young employees is getting into our playhouse, which just opened up after COVID. And so we were reminding people that, hey, you have to be 5 or younger to be able to watch it. Yeah, and you can, I don't know if you can play it there or not, but I mean, it's just short. And then one of our other youth services librarians shaking her finger. We probably got the most views and also the most negative comments about it. So, you know, it's just hard to say, but as to why people loved it, I mean, yeah, it's only a 9-second video, but people just enjoyed it, I guess. So
I'll go ahead and play it. Let me know if the sound comes through or not. Hopefully it will.
and my daughter's crying. That's my daughter, actually. She's crying in the window too at the very end. But people just loved it. And as to why, we don't know. But the only thing that's come close to that is where they did a viral dance, and or even a Superman improvisation, which was kind of cool. And if you want, I'll put those links in there so you can see those. But yeah, you know, our youth services is very creative and they come up with some nice things. I wish I was that creative. That's my problem.
Stop. So yeah, and I think that kind of brings us back to that idea of like, how much bandwidth do we each have? Who is running these? And it looks like in a lot of these scenarios, it's actually people on the public service floors that takes this on. And that's really interesting to think about, because that is even at my own library, who has sort of pitched the idea of having TikTok. But right now they also don't have the bandwidth to actually take it on. Has anyone actually started hiring specific positions to sort of do this actual content creation? Or are we all just using staff we have available to us to make this happen?
We did have a content coordinator position over here at Lincolnwood. And just after a couple of staffing changes, it's kind of, we don't have anybody in that position, and I don't know if we're going to be bringing it back. But at one point we did have a role here that was specifically for content generation for social media stuff. As we've seen staff come and go, we have developed a content creation committee with representatives from different departments led by historically that person or our head of marketing most recently. And that is sort of like a little bit of a funnel where each representative from the different departments takes ideas from the department, brings them to the committee, and the committee then talks about how to make them happen, or if it's just not going to work for the voice or the tone of the library at the time, kind of giving that information to those who created the idea, and telling them why, so that they're not just left in limbo. But really, that's been an effective model for us as far as generating content around the library.
We've already talked a lot about trends because obviously TikTok is one, and general social media. And I also think it would be interesting, like, just jump in the conversation. If you have any way of keeping up with trends outside of just relying on staff, it would be great to hear, you know, like how you stay on top of all the different trends, whether you are personally invested in these platforms or not. Or just tell us what you're doing with your TikTok. It's been great to sort of look at some of these links and watch the different videos. And book talk was mentioned, which is an important thing to talk about because it is wildly popular. So we'd love to hear about successes with that, things that you've struggled with, you know, jumping on sort of this book talk bandwagon. And you don't have to be doing this on TikTok, right? Book talk can be wherever you're using it. But it'd be great to hear about some success with that. And in the chat, it looks like there are people also looking for editing software recommendations. And Beth, you make a really good point. Like it's fun to do trends, but also creating content that focuses on what you do as a library that nobody else does is really great. Beth, would you mind sharing more about like who comes up with that content then for you? Is it something that you think about? Do you have a committee? Are there just staff who are interested that bring ideas to you?
Sure. I actually am the social media specialist, so I do all the content myself. I saw someone in here mention being older at 37. Well, I'm 59 and I absolutely adore TikTok. It's so much fun. And we follow a lot of libraries. So we get a lot of good ideas. But yeah, I try to kind of keep up with the trends and see what the kids are looking at and involve our younger staff as well. I know that someone had mentioned about editing. I use an editor called CapCut, which is free, but also TikTok has an editor within its own software that's really easy to use. And it's good to use them for your reels as well. So you're not inventing, you know, the wheel twice. If you've got something that's really good on TikTok, just throw it on your Instagram reels too, and you can reach a lot more people that way. It's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. I wish I had more time to do it.
Would you mind talking about CapCut just a little bit and the use and the functionality of it? I've never heard of that, but you said free and it piqued my interest.
Yes, there is, someone just put a link in the chat for it. And, you know, I actually get a lot of ideas on things like that by watching TikToks. And there are a lot of people that do tutorials. There's a gal called The Mothership. If anyone's ever seen her, I'll put her in the link there too. And she's the one that told me about CapCut. But you would just create your video just on your phone, and then you would upload it to CapCut, and you can splice and you can move things around and you can add music and all that kind of stuff. And then you just save it, and then you would just upload it to TikTok. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty neat site, free app.
And is the mothership that you mentioned on TikTok?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
I put it in
Just
the
wanted
chat there. It's kind
Oh,
of
got
spelled
it.
oddly, but yes.
Oh, I see. Got it.
She kind of follows trends. She does like commercials and things, but she follows trends and she will show you how to do them, which is really important because sometimes you see these cool things, you're like, how did they do that? And she'll show you how.
Great. One thing that we hope to do sort of after this meeting is maybe send out a small list of resources, and we can include some of this stuff so that everybody has access to that, or drop it onto the ILA marketing forum page. So
I think in talking about the mothership, though, you bring up a really good point. And I've been in the library world for now, like, 7, 8 years or something. So those of you who may have heard me talk in past meetings or anything like that, one of the things that I always go back to is that everybody is kind of a marketer at some point in their life, whether they have the professional title or the degree or some sort of experience like that. But as consumers, we know what works, what doesn't work, right? We walk down a grocery aisle, we know what grabs our attention versus what maybe doesn't. It's the same thing on social media too. And so when we're talking about resources like the mothership and stuff, they're so successful, or maybe she's so successful, and people like that too, because they're small and digestible, right? And so sometimes when we are marketing library resources, or we're having folks who maybe don't have that thought when they're creating scripts or sort of a plan for making these videos and stuff, is to remember that you need to be concise, you need to be friendly, you need to be relevant, and you kind of need to be quick about it, right? The TikTok, I think they kind of keep expanding their how long you can make a video limits, or maybe it changes versus how many followers you have. I'm not entirely sure. But if we can sell somebody on a library resource in less than a minute, I think we've done our job. Just like how the mothership can teach you how to do something in a video editing program in under a minute, under 3 minutes, whatever it may be. But I think that there's something to think about with that in making it, oh my gosh, 10 minutes on TikTok seems like a very long time. But at least if you have that scrolling thing at the bottom, maybe it's a little bit more palatable. But I think that that's something to keep in the back of our mind is, we had Vine, which was 9 seconds or something back a couple years ago. And now we've got TikTok, which is up to a minute or 3 minutes or 10 minutes maybe. But people have attention spans for those seconds and measured in seconds. And I think that that's just important for us to think about and remember as we move forward with TikTok stuff.
yeah, sort of following along the chat, there's 2 things I think it would be kind of good to discuss. Brooke asked about who you gear your TikToks to, and it looks like there's sort of a mix of responses, but if anyone wants to talk a little bit about that, if they create content with a specific audience in mind, or it's really just kind of based off trends, or to some degree personal and professional interests of the staff who are creating things. And I see Beth said you think that TikTok should just be what makes you laugh or makes you happy. And I think it was you earlier who talked too just about focusing on things that are specific to your library or public libraries in general.
Exactly. I think it's good to mix, throw in a viral thing every once in a while just to kind of grab people's attention. But like we do our book talk where we introduce new books. We also started a new thing where we're doing vocabulary. So words you might have read in a book, but didn't know what they meant or how to pronounce them. So those have been kind of catching on really well too.
And then there was a question about leveraging your own personal accounts. And this is something that comes up a lot, I feel like in general at my library, and I would love to hear from other people about this. It looks like at Champaign there are staff who leverage their own personal accounts when appropriate. Do you want to share a little bit more about how that's worked? And then if anyone else wants to share, it looks like, yep. Great.
I'm happy to share. Just, I mean, there are certain things that are very appropriate in work. I'm the same person in my personal life and I am at work. I kind of have to be, I feel like, as the marketing director. So people know I work here and I share something from my personal accounts. So I definitely do that on the Facebook, in the Facebook part of the world. But I know that on the team, we have a published author. And so she'll share on her professional author account, she'll like content that she created. It's very, it's very transparent in a way, but I feel like kind of, why not? I mean, if you're comfortable with it, we don't do any pressuring. We never would say to a staff member, you should share, or you should like in your personal, I don't want anybody to feel like they have to, but if they want to, we know that if you share content or like content, it's going to get before more eyeballs. And so why not do that for your own content that you're sharing? And since we're a team approach, it's different people, different times, and also it's helping your colleagues too. I like it when I can go in on my personal side and like a content that a colleague posted. I get excited. It's kind of exciting when someone else has shared content and I can like it.
Great. Does anyone else have any insight on that and using that to cross leverage? Again, I think most people would understand that there's no pressure that needs to happen. That is something we go back and forth about with social media platforms in general, how much we'll do that cross leveraging or not. And we haven't really made a concrete decision here at Mount Prospect.
I was just thinking about that, not kind of mixing things up, but I mean, it's a social network. And just like we are out at the grocery store, we talk about the library. Why would we not do that in our social media as well? So I think it's fine to cross promote those things.
Yeah, and you're always going to have an audience that may be only on Twitter, only on Instagram, only on Facebook. You will have, for sure, people who are on all of the things, but generally speaking, and this may have changed over the course of the pandemic, but people generally have their favorite social media thing that they focus all of their attention on, or the majority of their attention on. So cross-promoting across platforms, at least, seems like a relevant and a good practice to continue. So is tagging people. And by tagging people, I mean like a community partnership if you're making a video with somebody else. But we've seen a lot of success over here, of course, not on TikTok, more so on Instagram or Twitter, but in tagging authors in things, and sometimes even musicians if we're focusing on a musical type thing. But it's kind of fun to see some engagement with that. And even if they're just liking something that we do, it's kind of interesting. We've included some of that stuff in board reports, even to let our board know that, hey, we're getting attention from these super duper famous people, just because we're mentioning their materials in our collection, which brings both attention to our library specifically, but also to libraries overall when you get to be on a scale like that.
And Sandy, if you have something to add, that would be great.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm with Warren Newport, and one of my staff members, Karen Gilpatrick, is also joining us today. Warren Newport does not have a TikTok account, so we're here to learn and hear more about all of the input that is being shared today. I had a question though, in regards to cross promotion, across different social media platforms. At one point earlier this year, I thought Instagram had indicated that they really wanted any content creators in that platform to focus on Reels, and they were not all that friendly about having TikToks cross over. A question that I have is that, for the libraries that are using all of these variety of social media platforms, are you taking a trend and then creating a separate TikTok, a separate Reel, a separate maybe sharing that on Facebook, since Instagram and Facebook are connected? How are you working with that?
You can feel free to share that process in the chat too, and Chris or myself can sort of read off the comment.
Okay. Any suggestions?
We try to save time as much as we can.
Mhm.
So we will use our same TikTok, especially something that's gone viral, or, well, you know, it's been a little bit popular. And we'll put it on Reels, but there is a way that you can screen record your TikTok and without the TikTok label on it, and then you could put it on Reels that way. But I have not had any trouble putting my TikToks onto Reels. That hasn't been a problem in the past.
Thank you for that, because that's helpful to know. I think it was more of an algorithm sort of thing, you know,
Right.
where they were going to be via the algorithm have Reels more visible in Instagram versus something that was shared from TikTok.
Yeah, because
So-
we create a reel, but we use the video from the TikTok. So other than the fact that they might see the little TikTok logo on there, they wouldn't know where it came from.
Okay, thank you. May I ask a couple of other general questions at this time?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. Another question that I have is, you know, we have a content committee that's fairly widespread throughout the library. And it kind of languished, you know, during COVID. So we're looking to try to reorganize ourselves and bring some form of that back. The one thing that I have noticed amongst our staff is that there tends to be a little bit of siloing, you know, in terms of there are a few staff members that would be really dominant in terms of handling TikTok or Reels. And I look for, as the head of communications for the library, balance, you know, that if there's something of note in circulation, yet we don't have a rep on that committee, unless we pursue that in communications, they're not really going to get highlighted, if you understand what I'm saying. So how have you managed that, you know, in social media platforms in general for your strategies, and maybe specifically for TikTok? Because again, the group I'm thinking of is kind of extroverted. They do great with it, but they're not all that great with bringing in other members of the staff or highlighting other aspects of the library, if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense. Is there anybody who's out in the virtual audience who would like to answer that maybe? Or provide any insight that they've experienced? Perhaps somebody is chatting, but I'll share my couple cents on that. It's really, really nice to hear that you have a group of people who are super duper engaged and want to be kind of on the planning side, but then also are comfortable being on camera. One of the things that we've been able to do for Lincolnwood, and I think it's kind of helped get that representation from the various departments, is to say, all we're looking for from everybody, or anybody who wants to, is to just share an idea. Just share something about coming from your department, coming from a trend, coming from a resource, coming from something. Just share the idea with us. Doesn't mean you have to be on camera, doesn't mean you have to be the one to do it, but as long as we can get, like, that's how we get that representation and that buy-in from across the departments, because we have people on staff here who being on camera would be like a nightmare for them. And I can't, in any good faith, ask them to be on camera to get over that uncomfortability. It just doesn't seem right. And it would probably make for an awkward, unpleasant video anyways for people who are watching. They could probably sense that tension or that anxiety. But when you tell people, you don't have to be on camera, just give us an idea, give us something to work with, and we'll take it from there. That's when we start to see that buy-in more specifically from across many, many departments.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
I have one more question and I'll put my hand down. I'm sorry.
Of course.
One other question that I have is measurables, you know, in terms of looking at everything that you have to do, you know, in terms of communications and content and marketing. I was reading some of the chat comments, you know, about, well, it's fun and it's engaging. And is the idea of the TikTok content creation really just engaging with the community, or are you able to basically measure some of the things you're highlighting within the videos? You know, like I think of some of the more traditional social media platforms like Facebook, you might have a bit.ly link in there and you can track statistics to see whether someone's circulating material or attending a program, you know, something. aside from followers, aside from something going viral, are you able to connect this back to library services and kind of determine whether you've increased the popularity from using the platforms? And I'll put my hand down now. Thank you.
That's quite a question. Of course, there's analytics that you can get on TikTok, just as you can with those other things. But other than maybe people coming in and saying, hey, I want that book that I saw you talk about on TikTok, I'm not quite sure how we could get information like that. Any thoughts from anyone else?
Well, I think the question comes up is just when you have so many things that you have to do, you know, in a day, in a week, in a month, and the goals, that's always the challenge, is what's going to be the most effective, you know, for what you need to promote for the library. And so that's kind of in the back of my head as we're talking about all of this too. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on kind of measuring those analytics, or measuring, I guess, the success, or the, so I think success is probably the right word, of a video, of a push, of a communications effort?
I have to tell you real quick that I feel successful when one of our little 12-year-olds comes into the building and says, I follow you on TikTok.
Yes.
And I think that's something that always comes up, that question, Sandy, about social media platforms. Like, is there a way to track it? What are we getting out of this? And in some ways, I think it's community specific and then driven by your library strategic plan or your communications plan. You know, because that success is determined differently by what your community needs, what your director or your communications department has sort of established. So in some ways, it's kind of, you know, up to each library to determine the value and how they're measuring that success, and then follow through on that.
Yeah, one of the things that we do over here in Lincolnwood is we are kind of on this bi-monthly schedule for our programming. Our newsletters cover 2 months. And so when we're planning our newsletter, we're reviewing programs and other pieces of content that we want to include in that 2-month chunk of time. And so we'll look at statistics and say, okay, Mango Languages is down, Consumer Reports is down, whatever. We'll focus on those for the next 2 months. And so in the back of our mind, we know, okay, our video should be pointing people to Consumer Reports or Mango Languages or this part of the collection, whatever. And then so when we're looking at the next couple of months, when we meet again in person to talk about what we're going to do for the next couple of months, we'll spend a little bit of time reviewing statistics from the past 2 months to see, okay, we were focusing on Mango Languages, Consumer Reports in this random part of the collection. Did we see an uptick in use in those resources? Did we see more parts of that collection actually leave the building? And that's how we measure success over here, because I got to tell you, Facebook, Twitter, all those analytics, they're great and they're fun to look at, but they change pretty frequently, and they're not always relevant to what we're doing here specifically for us. But that's the biggest connection that I've been able to see as far as whether something is successful or not. And generally speaking, you'll see a little bit of an uptick, at least with people clicking on something, or like if you feature it in an e-newsletter, you can generally see where people are clicking in that as well, kind of like akin to a bit.ly link in a Facebook post. So there are still some of those traditional metrics that are relevant, but also just reviewing those statistics and seeing if there's an uptick that matches your marketing efforts. That's where we've at least been able to see success and be able to actually validate that feeling of success.
That's extremely helpful, Chris. And I think that's one of the challenges here at our library, is kind of getting the buy-in from staff to be able to understand strategically what we need to focus on, you know. So I think that starts at a basic level, not so much the TikTok level. That's really a helpful reminder. Thank you.
For sure.
I appreciated Beth's point about having fun. I think that, you know, when we talk about numbers, I think it's very difficult to prove, right? Prove worth. But if there's conversation happening and we're there for it, that already shows that there's benefit, I think, being where people are. I don't know exactly how old, I don't even know if it's primarily teens that follow our team on TikTok or not. But one of the things I've found really beneficial for helping educate people about benefit of social is to screenshot conversations and share the screenshot. So You know, as I was looking at our account today, I was like, oh, there's some conversations there that would be good to share back, especially if it's complementing the library on something we've done in real time, or thanks for that recommendation. I read the book, it was great. You know, even just something like that shares back a benefit that we're in the space having a conversation. And I see, you know, I see your heads nodding. I think it just helps make it clearer what we're doing and why we're there, if there's a specific example.
Thank you. That's very helpful too.
Yeah, and you may only be getting that one comment saying thank you for the book recommendation. I loved it, but I got to believe that that one person was, you know, a great representative for a bunch of people who felt the exact same way. So I would also caution everybody and say, yeah, you may only get one comment, or you may only get a few likes or something, but that doesn't mean that it's not reaching more people, or that you're not doing the same thing for the people who are being vocal and thanking you for many other people out there either. So I just don't want anybody to feel distraught or down if they don't feel like their videos are successful as their neighbors or anything else like that. You got to start somewhere. And you know, people are doing this on their phone. Doesn't mean they're not engaged with it. It just means that they're just scrolling right on through. It doesn't mean that they don't like it. That doesn't mean that they didn't benefit from it.
And Stephanie, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I am with the Hillside Public Library. We do not have a TikTok account, so I'm on to gain some insight and some information gathering. And it's great to hear, you know, how all of these other libraries are using it. My one question is, I know that timing is kind of very important with social in general, but especially, you know, with the TikTok. So how quickly would you say, you know, if something happens, do you then go about creating a TikTok to share so that it's still relevant to your audience? And if you do include patrons, which it sounds like, you know, the one library was including a patron, you know, talking about like a TikTok that was mentioning a service that they provide. Do you get permission from the patron? And if so, that how are you doing that? Is it like a photo release or a video release, or is there some kind of inherent, like, if you're in the library, you're fair game to be videoed?
I mean,
Is
I
there
think,
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say, you know, anyone can always drop their comments in the chat about that, but sort of to, you know, spin off of your question a little bit too, if anybody, like, as we're asking all these questions about trends and the success and all the fun of this, you know, if you want to share like the fact that there are some disadvantages, like it's hard to be timely and relevant, please also share that, because I think as much as we want to keep this conversation positive, these are things that we struggle with, that timeliness, that relevance, the process to create things quickly. It is one of the reasons we still do not have a TikTok. And I'm going to guess that might be true for a lot of you. So please also feel free to share comments on that as well.
Well, as far as like, if we're going to record TikToks or, you know, people, we will definitely ask them if it's okay to put their image on. Comments, I think if you're just screenshotting a comment, that's kind of tricky, but if they've commented, it's already a public kind of record there. So I wouldn't think you'd have to ask their permission, but I really don't know legally wise. It is hard to follow all the trends. I'll see some cute things, and then like a week later, I haven't had a chance to do it, and they're all past that by now. So that's kind of tricky, keeping up.
I can also add in, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, just about the patron recording and all that kind of stuff too. I would say it's a good opportunity to go back and review your social media policies, your videoing of people in the library policies. If you don't have any of those, I would highly recommend you talk to your board, talk to your directors, talk to whomever the decision makers may be for your library, and get something like that implemented. There's lots of library examples out there for everybody to borrow from, but generally speaking, we're a public building. So if you walk in, you can kind of be photographed and recorded in that sense. It is very, very, very nice. And it is kind of best practice to get people's permissions, particularly if you're going to be printing something, and particularly if there's a child involved. I would caution everybody to really kind of get that approval on it. But at the same time, you know, you come to a program and it's part of our like cautionary tale that if you come to a program, there's a good chance it'll be photographed and used on social media, but let us know if you don't want that. So sort of along the opt-out lines of things. But again, I would just kind of, from an administrative perspective, review your policies and see what your policies say, because that's what's going to back you up the most. And if you don't have those in place, for sure, think about getting that in place sooner rather than later.
That was basically exactly what I was going to say. You know, if you don't have those policies, you can create them, but we tend to, at our own library, default to social media as long as it's not just a child and they're with, you know, a legal guardian. We are okay using verbal consent, like, hey, are you okay being in this video? If it's in our newsletter, which would not apply to video content, we do try to get photo releases, just because technically we could pull social, even if our ultimate goal, because of all sorts of legal laws surrounding that, is not to take content down. We likely could if we needed to.
And one little tip about photo releases and stuff like that I'll share is we condensed our photo release form into a business card size. And I just had them printed the same way that I have all the other business cards in the building printed. And so it's easy for people who are taking photos or videos or something in a program, just have it in their pocket and have it out and ready to go for anybody who's there, and says it's got exactly what is, you know, I consent to blah, 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 blah. A space for the name, a space for the date, space for anybody's name who may be in the photo or the video if they're a child or a caregiver or guardian or something. So just keep that in the back of your mind too. It doesn't have to be a big, scary 8.5 by 11 form that everybody has to read. It can just say, I consent to having my photo or video taken, and that's it.
That tiny photo release is a great idea, and maybe you'd
That
even
is
be
a great
willing
idea.
to share a copy of it as one of the resources on our,
Sure.
yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
I do have a tip with respect to time saving if you guys are interested in it.
Of course.
What our youth services does a lot is they'll have like a brainstorming session. And so what they'll do is then come Wednesday, they're going to do their filming, and they might do 3 or 4 TikToks. And the nice thing, and the thing that you guys who don't TikTok might not realize, is you don't have to release them all at once. You can actually send them to only me and release them at different times. But that saves a lot of time by just doing all the filming at once, figuring out ahead of time how you want to do it, break it out, and that. So
Exactly. And you can keep lots of drafts in your TikTok, get them all ready to go, put all the stuff you want on them, and then just save them to drafts. And then when you're ready, just send them out.
Yeah, and I really, kind of along the same lines, I want to draw attention to what Brooke said in the chat. You know, one of the nicest things that you could do is exactly what Brooke has laid out here. Do some practicing ahead of time. Create some cool videos that are on trend, maybe in the moment, but you're not posting them somewhere, because especially if you don't have a TikTok or some sort of social media presence right away, what you can then do is take those practice videos, the really good ones, the cream of the crop, whatever, and use that to build your library as you're developing your page, so that you're not releasing a page that's just blank. So when you set up that page and you get it going, there's at least some content there for people to look at. We don't have a TikTok here in Lincolnwood, but we have a year's worth of like these 1-minute story time videos or whatever. So we'll add the best of those to that page. And then when we're good to go, when we actually do create a TikTok page, if we ever get to that point, we'll have content that's already ready for it. So I think that that's just a really great idea, Brooke. And I wanted to make sure everybody saw that. Is just don't put the pressure on yourself to get that page out there immediately just because everybody else does. Take some time and practice with it and develop a little bit of a library. And then when you are ready, use that material to propagate your page.
You know, this is something I'm kind of interested in, and a lot of this is connecting back to this idea. Do you feel that one of the primary ways to be successful on social media then is to have that staff investment, like that belief that it is fun and, you know, this personal interest in the trends? Is that, do we think, sort of how this is most successful? In which case it just makes me think about, like, how do you get staff buy-in on this, staff who are interested in doing it? Because I think we keep sort of coming back to that idea.
I think what I have noticed with like other library TikToks and the ones that have been shared, and what people are saying is just like you can tell when somebody's having fun and when somebody genuinely enjoys what they're creating. And so I think yeah, you do need staff that's willing to do it, and like not just willing, but is bringing ideas. And then somebody was talking about how their content is unique to their library or to like library specific. And I think that's always really fun to see too, because you might not be a part of that niche, but if you can somehow feel like you're getting some insight or you can relate to maybe what another library is saying, I think that's always like, it makes you feel included. It's like, you don't always have to be in like on a trend, but you can, if you can create that community of people who like things that you like, or you're just a part of the book community, you know, that's already big enough, and that's already like, that'll make your audience feel special in a way, I guess.
So those of you then who are using TikTok somewhat, you know, by your own measures of success, would you say that if you don't currently have that staff who sort of have that investment in the platform, that you don't necessarily recommend moving towards TikTok? Or Robin, you know, you commented earlier, I think it was you didn't really have an interest in it, but then you sort of dove into it and are now obsessed. Because I think my guess is that there is a number of us on here who aren't using TikTok yet, and we're sort of still trying to figure out, you know, like, is it worth it? How much time should we put into it? I may be wrong, but based off of that. So, you know, just to kind of like, you know, wrap up sort of these conversations, I'm curious about, if you don't have staff who are invested in it and interested in it, you know, those of you who have accounts, would you still recommend creating one and moving forward?
I will honestly say, like, one of the main reasons why I wanted a TikTok for the library was not necessarily because of the trends and everything, but because I like the editor, honestly. And I think it's like easier to use as somebody, like, I am not like a hardcore computer literate, like I know the basics. So, you know, doing editing in there with my own videos, like on my own personal TikTok, like I felt very comfortable. And we don't have a lot of staff buy-in. Like our staff are very shy, some more than others. And you know, I don't want to keep showing the same people every time, but I know that our community, from looking at the analytics of our other social media channels, they like love seeing our staff. And those are always like the highest like engagement posts and whatever. So I don't know. I don't know if TikTok has like a huge value as far as like getting people involved like in our community, but I'm interested to see what happens. But more so, I'm interested to make our videos better because I just feel comfortable, like more comfortable with the editing tools within TikTok. So.
You know, this is somewhat, oh, go on, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a good idea for people who are interested or thinking about it is to just get on TikTok. You don't even have to have an account. You just go to tiktok.com and you can look at stuff and just see what other libraries are doing. And you just got to get in there and see, oh, yeah, this looks like fun. I could do this, or too much work. Just to get in there and check it out for yourselves.
I think without somebody who's invested and has had personal experience with it, I think I would be very cautious to jump in. None of us have, you know, a few hours a week where we're sitting around going, what should we be doing with those few hours, and let's learn TikTok. We're all having to kind of rejuggle, right, all of our plates that are in the air, and do we make it a priority or not? And I had chosen, with social streams, we have very small staff, 1.5 marketing for our library and for everything we do, foundation support, everything else. And we're all very busy people, but I've had to focus on the stream that gets the best results and it maximizes my time spent. It wasn't going to be TikTok. It was going to be Facebook it's going to be Facebook for a long time, just because of the way our community interacts with Facebook. So without having a dedicated group that was like, hey, we're going to take this on, and the commitment was going to be at least a year, that was important to me too, not to just jump on and for 2 months do something and then let it go. Anyway, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think that also I had, a question of my own kind of about this concern that if you have staff who are really invested in it and those staff leave, what sort of happens to these trendy accounts? I think it's kind of safe to say most of us who are using Facebook have a solid understanding of it now and will continue using it for the long run. But these newer platforms, I have thought about like, okay, if we let, the two staff who are interested kind of spearhead this, what happens if one of them leaves? When this type of work isn't assigned to anybody because we aren't trying to pressure them in, because most platforms you do need to create a personal account, or you can have a dummy account and violate technical terms of service. It's whole own thing. But so it's interesting to think about all of these things, and this has been really interesting for me.
Yeah, we've got just a couple minutes left, and I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So I want to make sure if anybody did ask a question and it didn't get answered, please put it in the chat, or please raise your hand, or just talk. We'll make sure that everything gets addressed. Otherwise, if anybody has any lingering last-minute questions, feel free to ask them now. I don't know if TikTok has the ability to do this or not, but one thing that I would recommend that everybody do, even if you're not thinking about starting a TikTok, is just go out there and make the account tied to something so you can at least get the name that you want for the account. You don't want some random person getting like Lincolnwood Library on TikTok or something, because we want Lincolnwood Library on TikTok. So I don't know if you can make an account and then make it private immediately, or how that might work, but that may be something to look into.
Yes, that's definitely a good idea. Grab that name.
Yeah.
And then Nikki did have a quick question about using cameras other than your phones. So tools that you use, if anyone wants to answer that in the chat, or go ahead and just jump in.
Coal City uses a Padcaster, which is like a iPad, and it is on a rolling tripod, so it can stay steady. But you have to make sure that you're, videotaping it or vertically. But it makes it a lot easier to be able to do it than trying to hold a phone steady while you might be doing a minute or two of videotaping. So
fancy. I usually just run around with my cell phone.
Well, one thing I was going to say about using your cell phone is check with your administrators, check with everybody else. But if you're using your personal device for work stuff, you really should be reimbursed for that in some way, shape, or form. So just kind of advocate for yourself on that, that if you're being asked to use your personal device for work stuff, I would caution and just say you should seek reimbursement for that, potentially, depending on how you're using it and that kind of stuff. I would recommend using like a library provided iPad if your library has something like that, just so that you're not getting into any of those weird areas. But I know that the cameras on these are so powerful and so great, and they can kind of do everything all in one. But just be mindful of that if you're using your personal device for work stuff, you should really advocate for yourself and say, I deserve a little bit of a device reimbursement for that.
That's a great idea. I had to do that because I was using my phone 90% of the time for work. So the board does give me a stipend for that. So that's definitely something to ask for sure.
Yeah. Is anybody else using, I'm sorry, the lights in this room are weird. Is anybody else using a camera or anything other than their phone or a tablet or a Padcaster? Is that Padcaster on a tripod that goes around? That seems kind of cool.
I also have been using an iPad for some things, but I also talked my director into letting me buy one of those fancy schmancy microphones that everybody uses on TikTok. I had to have one of those.
Like the little one that's in the shape of a microphone that people always just hold up here, or?
No, the big one that's the Yeti. If you ever see any
nice.
TikToks, everyone's got the Yeti.
The Yeti, yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, And if nobody else has any questions, this has been recorded and it will be on the ILA's YouTube channel on Monday. But I think one of our hopes is also to kind of round up these resources and hopefully find a way to share them with everybody who attended. It's something that we're hoping to do throughout this year with a lot of our roundtables.
Yeah. And then just a little bit of a plug too. As the ILA Marketing Forum board kind of moves into the future and talks about future roundtables, future topics for discussions, if you have anything that's relevant, and you know, post it on the Facebook page, ask the question, do all of those kinds of things too. But if for whatever reason, and it's totally okay, if you're not comfortable asking those questions, or you don't want to be the one to say, I would like help in this in a public forum like that, send Emmy and I an email, send Tamara an email over at ILA, just ask somebody and we'll totally take it into consideration and see, because chances are if you're thinking about it, a lot of other people are thinking about it too. So we're always looking for topics for discussions, for bringing in speakers, both inside and outside the library world on different topics. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like how to manage a social media account. It can be like how to manage burnout in the marketing world or something like that. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be tactical skills. It can also be emotional or mental skills as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward into the next year of roundtables.
This has been great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.